Welcome to the Gold Coast Smart Real Estate Podcast. I'm Brad Scott, here to help you make smart moves in the Gold Coast property market. Whether you're thinking of buying, selling, or just staying updated, we deep dive into everything you need to know, from our market insights to our unique open offers method of sale, a blend of auction and private treaty to give you the best of both worlds. Let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to the Gold Coast Smart Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Bell. It's a perfect time to reflect on what's happened in the Gold Coast property market and look, maybe have a look forward to what might be ahead in 2025. Now, joining me in the studio is the Principal of Smart Real Estate, Brad Scott, who's been keeping a close eye on all the trends this year, the challenges, the opportunities in the local market. Brad, welcome back.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Okay, so in this episode, let's review the key trends in the Gold Coast property market, including maybe supply, demand, pricing, migration, interest rates. There's a lot to unpack, isn't there?
There is.
Excellent. All right, well, look, can you maybe just start by giving me a bit of an overview of how you've seen this year go in terms of the market?
Yeah, so look, at the start of the year, I think what we found was there wasn't much stock available across the Gold Coast. So I think
that's been for a while now, hasn't it? Yeah, sort of since COVID, really.
Yeah, well, this year more so than other. It's probably in my 20-year history. It's probably the lightest on listings I've seen. I saw a stat. I think listings were down around 49% on what they were 5 years ago at the same time of the years. That's been a big issue for agents, unfortunately, because we didn't have the stock or the properties to sell people. Mm-hmm. On the demand side, the first half of the year, demand from buyers was still relatively strong. Mm-hmm. I think there was a big cash reserve there that was still flowing on from all the incentives from COVID.
Sure.
And so we were, with all the interest rate increases we experienced last year in 23, we're expecting the market to sort of slow down and property prices to drop in 2024, but what we found was in most areas, property prices were pretty stable, even increased in some areas.
Sure.
And I think that was predominantly from a lack of supply. So
Sure.
The demand was down a little bit, but the stock supply was down drastically. So there was slightly less buyers looking because of the increased interest rates, but the amount of properties that were available were drastically reduced. So we had those buyers looking at a lot less properties, which then, I guess, created more competition, which kept the market quite healthy and stable and buoyant. Yeah. Then going into the second half of the year, what we found was a big shift. So I was actually telling the team that I was expecting a lot of properties to hit the market in September, and just to hold on. September 1 came, and that's when we go into what we call spring sales.
Yep.
So most agents will sell more in the September, October, November, December quarter than what they will in the other 3 quarters.
Right,
generally.
in total.
Yeah, in the lead up to Christmas.
Sure.
And a lot of sellers understand this, and they put their houses on the market, as part of that. So one of the things that we have started to see was a substantial amount of properties hit the market from September onwards in 24.
Okay, so supply has increased.
Dramatically.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll see now, like I talk to buyers and sellers obviously every day, and I'm getting a lot of people commenting that they're starting to see, I was talking to a past client yesterday. She said, there's 5 for sale boards in my street. And she hasn't seen maybe 1 for sale board in the past few years.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, I'm finding that people financially probably starting to struggle a little bit. There's a little bit of uncertainty in the market with what's going to happen with interest rates. I think in the media there's very differing opinions on what's going to happen. We've got an election coming up next year. which may influence.
That's one thing I've never understood, to be absolutely honest, Brad. I've never understood why elections actually nothing changes, generally speaking, but our attitudes do. That's all that seems to happen. But we do have one coming.
So I think like my background, I'm an economist. I have got a university degree in finance. Used to be a business banker with the National Australia Bank. So I probably look at things.
We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, but so some of the things I look at, sort of as an economist and a real estate agent, is looking at trends and looking what's happening moving forward in the sort of the macro, what's happening. Definitely with elections, we have some sellers sort of talking about holding off until after an election to see what the result is. I'm in the same camp as you. I don't think it really makes a huge amount of difference.
But it affects everything, doesn't it? Retail, the works.
Yeah, so it can definitely affect consumer sentiment and confidence. Sometimes there's bigger things at play that maybe the general public don't know or understand. Sometimes with like interest rates at the moment with the Reserve Bank, if we took out immigration and if we took out the public spending on public jobs, we would technically be in a recession right now. So we've sort of been artificially propped up. And, obviously the Labor government going into an election year next year, they want us to obviously not be in a recession. And then you got the RBA on the other side who probably should be, all being equal, probably putting interest rates up a little bit more. But there's talk of them coming down early next year. So and that kind of has an inflationary effect on what they say and do. And so I think for the everyday punter, it's really hard to sort of look through the fog and work out really like what's happening.
What's real.
There's a lot of spin that goes on in government and the media to drive, clicks and keep people happy and positive, and the real numbers sometimes don't always show that. So we've seen a big increase in stock over the last, especially 2-3 months, and which is good because there's been a massive shortage. And on the demand side, since September, we've seen buyers really, and they're definitely being more cautious when buying real estate. So I guess we may see property prices drop down a little bit as we go into next year.
You feel as though that's where it's headed?
It's been a very strong market. We've had massive increases
quite a
since
while.
COVID. The Gold Coast market has been for years, for like sometimes a decade. I'd have clients from Sydney and Melbourne say, Brad, the Gold Coast is dead. We've had this property for 10 years. It hasn't gone up in value for 10 years. So I think post-COVID, we had this massive run-up in values, and we're sort of starting to taper off a bit. And I think it's obviously not sustainable long-term. And I think we're just sort of catching up to where we should have been on that long-term trend. We were sort of going sideways for a bit. We've had this massive run-up, and over the long-term average, that's probably where we should be anyway. As long as sellers and buyers understand that, we're probably not going to see that rate of growth that we have over the last few years, because it'll still, be positive over the long term. But we might see a bit of a pullback in the next 12, 18 months.
Sure. And just talking a little bit more about interest rates, they've been on hold this entire year now, haven't they? It doesn't actually feel as long as it has been, but I see it was just the other day I saw that economists, a lot of people thinking the first drop might come in that February, but most are saying the one after that, and the banks are saying the one after that. What's your take on where they might head in? And look, we know it's anyone's guess, really. And like you said, there's plenty of smoke and mirrors when it comes to it as well. But what do you see happening, and how do you think that will affect the market?
So a lot of economists are sort of predicting that we may see an interest rate drop or two, probably starting as early as February or March next year. Personally, I don't think we'll see that. I think it'll be a bit longer. So it might be more April, May. So economists are, not great at predicting the future with interest rate drops and increases. So I think as we see, obviously, interest rates decrease, you'll see a spur of demand. and it'll give buyers the confidence to sort of go back in. Because at the moment, there's a bit of uncertainty about what's going to happen next year, and buyers are being a little bit more cautious. Once they get that telltale sign from the RBA, that'll, I think, increase consumer confidence and lead on to another, increase in real estate over the 2025 year.
Sure. What about, market segments this year? Have you seen any particular differences or trends, throughout luxury homes or family homes, or obviously being on the Gold Coast, apartments are a big one?
Yeah, so they're all different markets, obviously, buying and renting, and whether you've got houses and apartments and the top end luxury.
Do they follow the same trends?
No, they don't.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's usually big differences in demand and stuff. So we've had a few apartment sales this year that were probably a bit weaker than I was expecting.
You expected, sure.
Especially in the higher end properties in the last few months since September onwards. We've seen a bigger pullback in those properties, which you would normally expect. The lower end stock obviously is more competitive still, because we're finding people are starting to, even the top end, we're starting to see people downsize, try and decrease the cost of living. That's a big cost of living pressure at the moment. It's a big thing.
Huge.
So we do a lot of prestige rentals, also at Smart Real Estate. And our senior property manager, we do a lot of properties in that 1,000 to 3,000 per week price bracket. We've been doing this for almost 20 years. I haven't seen a pullback in that prestige rental market, especially during that whole time. At the top end of town in expensive rentals, we're seeing a bit of a decline. And that sort of is flowing on to the cheaper price rental stock. So people are going from the big waterfront mansion down into maybe something that's on a dry block. People generally are still, the majority are family homes. If you've got a 3 or 4 bedroom house on a good block, waterfront or dry, you're generally okay. Your smaller apartments are sometimes a little bit harder to sell and rent, and on the higher side too. So your prestige luxury properties, again, some people are just being a bit more cautious with their dollars these days.
Makes sense. All right, so as we move into 2025, your one bit of advice for both a seller and a buyer.
For sellers, if you're thinking about selling probably in the next 12 months, I think the sooner you do it, probably the better. Simply because I think we'll see a bit of a pullback in prices.
And the increase in demand, as you said. Increase in supply, should I say.
So as we see, I think we'll see more and more properties hit the market, especially in the first half of 25. I'm having quite a few conversations at the moment, unfortunately, about people separating and divorce. So those people are generally, I guess, sort of highly emotional, but less emotional about selling. They just want to get it sold and move on. Which, they're not hanging out for the best price sometimes. They just want a quick exit. So as we sort of go into the first half of next year, I think we'll see more and more properties hit the market. So from a seller perspective, hitting the market in January or February might be better than sort of mid-year. And then for buyers, there's still great properties out there. We don't know when the market's going to bottom out. Of course, no one does. The only way we know it's bottomed is when it actually turns and goes back up. Because then you can look back and say, "Oh, that was the bottom."
That was there. It was.
So the good news for buyers is we'll probably see some really great deals over the next sort of 6-12 months. So for buyers, another thing I'd probably say is don't wait. Everyone tries to pick the bottom. It's like trying to pick the bottom of, crypto is very popular at the moment, and we're seeing them at all-time highs, and they're sort of pulling back and going up. And same with stocks, whether it's real estate or whatever asset class it is. I always say, look, if it's a property you like, you think it's in a good area, it's got good capital growth potential, something that somebody's going to want 5, 10, 20 years from now, if it's at a good price and you like it, pull the trigger, make a decision, buy it. You might not get it at the absolute rock bottom, but if we see a pullback in prices and you buy it here, and it goes a little bit cheaper, but then takes off in 10 years when you're selling it for twice as much, who cares whether you
dropped a little bit in the short
grand in the short term.
Makes sense.
So,
all right. Well, look, before we finish up, Brad, if you had to sum up 2024 in one sentence for the Gold Coast property market. I'm putting you on the spot here. One sentence, what would it be?
One sentence. Tough first half of the year as agents and getting much better in the second half.
Fantastic. All right. Well, look, Brad, thank you so much for breaking down the fascinating year in the Gold Coast property market. Your insights, as always, are invaluable, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling much more prepared for what's ahead in 2025. So to our listeners, if you are planning to buy or sell in 2025, Brad and his team at Smart Real Estate are here to help. www.smartrealestate.com.au is where you can get in touch for expert advice and tailored strategies to make your property goals a reality. So thanks for tuning in to the Gold Coast Smart Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you throughout 2025 with a new episode dropping every week with more tips and insights to help you navigate the ever-changing world of real estate. Thanks again, Brad.
Thanks, Adam. See you on the next one. Thanks for tuning into the Gold Coast Smart Real Estate Podcast. Remember, if you're thinking of selling, be smart. Explore your options and consider the power of open offers method of sale to maximize your result. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found today's insights helpful, feel free to share with a friend. Until next time, happy house hunting.